Before I turn it over to Zach, just say that, so the tax sale is something that we kind of live in and out of. Land banks, most of the property that land banks get across the country come through the tax foreclosure process, working with county, city government. So that's why this topic is so important to us. One of our roles we feel like that we've been doing and doing much better in the last year or so, really since Zach's come on, is be kind of a source of information. We just, there's a lot of information that's out there, but it can be really confusing, dispersed, and so we try to create kind of a central location for some of that related to property and make it accessible. So there's going to be some new tools that Zach introduced through this presentation that hopefully you guys will get a chance to go back and look at. So anyways, thank you for coming, and I'll pass it off to Zach.
Thanks, Nate. So we're going to view here in August. Okay, that's great, because some of this information is similar. Like Nate said, the tax sale is really important to us. If you're familiar with the Old West End project we're taking part of, 22 of those came directly from the tax sale. We were awarded those by the county commissioners. So really understanding the process, understanding how we can get properties out of this process and return them to productive use and return them to the tax rolls at the same time is really important to us as an organization. I'm going to ask some questions via poll throughout this, so if you have your phone, I'd really appreciate if you participate. We're actually implementing a grant right now from the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, and part of it is community engagement, which there's been a lot of that in certain parts of the city, but I want to get as much as I can, so if you could participate in this, that'd be great. So I'm going to talk here a little bit. It's going to be a lot of numbers, and then Nate's going to come back up at the end. So if you are interested in scanning this and participating, that'd be awesome. So I'm asking overall rate your attitude toward the tax certificate sale. I'm going to do this again at the end to see if it's changed at all. Yeah, just for the certificate sale. Yes. Yes, exactly. So all of these statistics that I'm going to go through are just about the lien sale, the certificate sale. Okay, everyone scanned it who wanted to? All right. It's not a bad rating. We'll skip that. Okay, so some basic understanding of the tax sale. Let's see here. So the basic mechanisms, upon 3 consecutive missed payments of your property taxes, which is around 18 months, that's 18 months. So, missed spring, fall, spring, or something similar, your property will be listed on the tax certificate sale. And at the tax sale, you're going to have a bid minimum listed on your property, which is going to be the accumulation of your delinquent taxes, which is the property taxes, any fines that have been levied on it, which includes a fee for being listed on the tax sale, penalties for late payments, etc., and then special assessments like your sewer assessments or your ditch assessments. So the goals of this tax sale process, though, just in a really basic sense, are to recoup delinquent taxes, but also to return properties to productive use. Whether that's a house being returned to be a rental with tenants or to be a new home for homeowners or even a commercial property. It can really be anything. It's just not what we would consider vacant and abandoned property. So one of the things that we focus on mostly is properties that do not end up selling at the tax sale. And we consider this property recidivism. So properties going back to the sale after they don't sell. But there's a few possible outcomes for these properties. They can continue to accumulate delinquent taxes and then be relisted at the next tax sale. So if they don't sell at one sale, they'll continue to accumulate those delinquent taxes and they'll be listed at the next sale. They can be converted to a tax deed by the county after a certain number of times not selling, and they'll be auctioned at the tax deed sale, which would typically be in the spring, whereas the certificate sale is usually in the fall. And then they can also be granted to an individual or an entity as either tax deeds or tax certificates, which is how we got the 22 properties in the Old West End for the project. They were granted to us, I think 20 of them as tax certificates and 2 of them as deeds. So the difference between a certificate and a deed, in case you're not aware, the certificates, it's going to be earlier in the process basically, where we still have to take it through the redemption period, which is a year long in Indiana. And after that redemption period, that's when the commissioners, or you really are taking it to deed. You have to petition the court, and you are getting the rights to that property. So the certificate kind of transfers into a deed. At the deed sale, the commissioners have already taken that to deed for you, and then they're giving you a commissioner's deed for that property. So they're the ones who took it to deed instead of you. Are there any questions on that? That's a really simplistic overview. Okay. So another thing that we pay really close attention to is tax sale surplus, and I'm going to go over the statistics from this year in just a minute here. So tax sale surplus is the difference between the minimum bid and then what the final bid price is of a property. So the county and the Supreme Court just ruled on this, a federal court, it was the Supreme Court. They said that counties can only be made whole. They're not allowed to make a profit off of these properties. So ideally, this surplus is claimable by the original owner of the property. That surplus is not to be left with the county. Which in Indiana, there is a process, which means that we weren't really affected by the ruling as much as some other states, but there is a process for owners to get that surplus back if they decide not to claim their property back. If the original owner does decide to redeem that tax certificate, they want their property back, that bidder can claim their surplus dollars back. So really in no situation the county is supposed to keep those surplus dollars. In addition to this, if you are a tax certificate bidder and you go to the tax certificate sale and you buy properties, and you pay the minimum bid plus a little bit more, which would be the surplus, you get, if that original owner decides to redeem the property, you will get 10% back in the first 6 months on top of that minimum bid, 15% on top of that minimum bid in the second 6 months, and then you'll also get 5% of your surplus bid. So if someone was bidding you up and you ran that up really high, you'll get 5% back on those surplus dollars. So this is kind of set up that you're incentivizing that original owner who's delinquent on their property to pay the county back for what they're owed, or they will lose their property. And if you don't want to lose your property, you just have to pay. So the higher that bid goes, I mean, the more incentivizing it can be for someone to pay that off and get their property back. It also makes it look like that property is worth a lot of money. So we've said that this kind of means that property speculation can be incentivized, especially from people, like a few scenarios where people get lots of tax certificates. They don't really have plans for properties. They're getting vacant land. They don't have any intention to build, but they want to get money off the property, whether that's money from doing nothing with the property and then selling it for a profit, or money from the owners with no intention to actually help the property return to productive use. Okay, so let's move into some of the results from the tax sale. So this is going to be fall of 2025, and then each slide is going to be compared to last year. But we do have this analysis back to 2015 right now. So there were 522 parcels listed on the tax sale in the fall of 2025, and this is just within the Muncie boundaries. 191 of these sold, and 331 of them did not sell. So right off the bat, you can see that a majority of the properties that are on the tax sale aren't actually selling. So you can see there. And then comparing to the 2024 sale, it's a similar story, although there were a larger percentage sold. but 245 sold versus 293 that did not sell in 2024.
Do you know the percentage of deeds that are were put back in the sale from the deed sale?
From the deed sale?
Yeah.
The last time they ran a deed sale was 22, I think.
I know there was two in the fall sale that were in the deed sale, but they got put into this sale. And then they
Yeah, I don't know that exact number because from my understanding, and Nate, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but the deed sale was canceled in August. They made, I think it was an administrative error where they placed everything that didn't sell on the 24 tax sale onto the deed sale, but there's rules about how many times it needs to go through before it can just become a deed. So most of the properties that didn't sell, that were placed in the deed sale and taken off, were put back on the tax sale this year.
Are you asking specifically deed sale to tax sale, or just in general, how many properties have been to the recent tax sale? Well, really both, because I think you'll be curious to know that. Because I know there was two properties I was looking at in the deed sale, and they got put in here. It didn't sell here. I'm just waiting for them to go to the deed sale to go lower, back in the lots.
It appears, though, that that's really a correct assumption, that the certificate sale isn't nearly as appealing as the deed sale because you have to take that to deed it yourself. You have to petition the court. There's higher legal fees, which there are. I think there is some reimbursement for that. But if the commissioners can do that for you and just hand you a deed, I mean, everyone would prefer that, really. So properties that aren't worth to some during the certificate sale to pay whatever the minimum bid is might be at the deed sale. And in the deed sale, those prices can also be set lower since you're just really paying for the deed. You're not necessarily needing to recoup all those taxes. So the commissioners have, or the county has offset some of those delinquent taxes. Yes?
What percentage of the parcels are vacant versus that structure still on them?
I've found this statistic before. I can't give you an exact number off the top of my head, but of the ones that sell, almost all of them are structural. And I'm going to show you a regression analysis in a bit about improvements value to the likelihood that people are going to bid on it in surplus.
Yeah, so the last sale, I'm not sure if it was the deed sale that was canceled or it was the certificate sale, but I went through the list and like every single thing was vacant. And then when I've gone before to try to buy vacant lots, it's like it's so hard to get the approval to put something on there. Like you can't put a mobile home on there. You can't put a tiny house on there. You have to put like a structure that's not going to be worth it. So I think if there was a way that vacant land could be more useful.
Yeah, yeah.
Because I don't think the vacant lots are.
We've had this discussion before about how restrictive the zoning seems. A lot of these, a lot of the zoning ordinance was placed after a lot of Muncie was already developed, especially the inner city. And it doesn't always allow for new development on something that's been demolished and needs to be an infill lot, even in the R5 zone. But they have recently, I don't know if it passed, but they recently expanded it. They were just waiting for signature. But you're absolutely correct in that at the deed sale, it does seem to appear to be more just vacant lots because the ones that have structures are selling at the tax certificate sale. Because people think with this improvement value on it, with this structure, it's worth enough for me to take it through this process myself. Because if I wait and I don't bid on it, someone else is going to get it. All right, so talking about the revenue gained from this tax sale. Oh, sorry, so the 2025 on the left, this is the bid minimum in the left side, which is the delinquent taxes, everything that was owed. Bid price is what's being paid, and then bid surplus is the difference between what was paid and what was owed. So bid minimum, it's color-coded, where the dark blue are the properties that sold, and the light blue are the properties that did not sell. So this is the total sum of delinquency, of tax delinquency, for properties that sold in 25 and did not sell in 25. So as you can see, a dramatic difference between the ones that are selling and how much they owe, and the ones that are not selling and how much they owe. And bid price, also it's dark blue, right? So all that money being recouped is for those properties that sold. The ones that are not selling obviously are not generating any revenue. They're not generating any recouping of tax dollars for the county. And again, it's important to note that these dollars cannot be reallocated toward paying off the taxes for another structure or offsetting those costs, because the original owner still has the right to get these dollars back. And I'm going to explain that further in a second here. But this is 2024, which this really spiked a lot of analysis, because you can see it looks similar in the case of bid minimum, sold versus unsold. But the surplus far exceeded the total bid minimum. So it's $3.9 million in surplus, but only 2.7 in tax delinquency. So again, the sum of delinquent taxes for properties that did not sell, so this money was not recouped, $2.8 million at this tax sale process. The dark blue is the sum of delinquent taxes for properties that did sell. So this money was recouped and stays with the county. There's not a scenario where the county loses this money. This money has been given to the county. So when someone even if someone redeems their property, that money will stay with the county, and the excess is what they're going to be paying to whoever bid on that property. So the bid price, again, is the total amount paid by winning bidders at the tax sale, and this includes the bid minimum and the surplus. And in the bid surplus, it's the total amount paid by winning bidders in excess of the bid minimum. So this money is placed in an escrow fund, which is eligible for redemption by the original owner if they choose, so if they forego redeeming their property. So if they don't want their property back, they are entitled, per the U.S. Supreme Court, to get that money back from this escrow fund. I think they also have a year for this in Indiana. But they can also choose not to do this. If the property is redeemed, again, the money goes back to the winning bidder. And again, like I said at the beginning, the winning bidders in the first 6 months are subject to 10% returns on that minimum bid, 15% in the second 6 months on the minimum bid, and then 5% on the bid surplus. Any questions on this so far?
So from 0 to 6 months, different percentage. What percentage of the 386,000 were redeemed? That if you have it. So I'm thinking about the longer it stays out, so it goes past 6 months, you get another 15% on top of that. How quickly do property owners redeem the property here?
It depends. So, I mean, there's people who have just not paid their taxes because they just forgot. And all of a sudden they get an alert that the property sold, they redeem it right away. Others, it's like, I'm not going to get any money for selling this property. It's in an LLC, so I'm not really liable for it. I'm just going to let it go, and it's not going to get redeemed at all. So there's a really big gap. I mean, I think the best strategy, if your strategy is just to get money out of this and you don't want the property, you're trying to find those needles in the haystack that are going to get redeemed at some point, but they're not going to get redeemed right away.
That's what I'm going
Yeah.
It's in the interest of those who are paying this big sum of money.
Exactly.
Or to go beyond 6 months. They really can't.
Yeah. So this is 2025, so we don't have results on how many have been redeemed yet so far, but most of them do seem to get redeemed in past years.
You know what it costs the county
To
to do the auction and labor and
I don't know the dollar amount, but they charge, it's like a $95 tax sale fee. So if you get listed on the sale, that fee gets attached to the delinquent taxes, and then that's the minimum bid. Yeah.
This was from our previous slide about the thing about mobile homes going on these vacant properties. How do you guys treat that? Because I've seen some of these, especially in some of the more lower class neighborhoods.
How do we treat it?
Yeah, like mobile homes, like for the land bank, like when it comes to like a mobile home going on a property with the land bank.
We really don't, we've done that once, where we sold a property to somebody who put a non-permanent home, and we kind of got in trouble with the building commissioner. We had to have a meeting and talk it through. We have to abide by what the code is, zoning code. So it's something that we're not, at this point, when we evaluate bids, it's something that's not a positive. city authorities will do that.
I agree on this, that it kind of diminishes the property values of the stable homes surrounding it.
Yeah, it's not really, it's a value judgment by us, it's just because we get in trouble at this point.
Oh, I was hitting the back button. Okay, so I'm going to do an analysis or show you what the buyers that participated in the tax sale look like. So in 2025, there were 25 total buyers of these tax certificates. These were the top 5. So the number 1 bidder at this tax sale spent 40% of the capital that was spent at the tax sale. 25 bidders, one of them spent 40%, which was almost $1.2 million. So the top 5, again, the top 5 out of 25 separate bidders spent almost 90% of the capital that was expended at the tax sale, or over $2.6 million. So there's 20 little guys trying to compete against these 5 big guys when it comes to spending money and getting tax certificates.
It's almost impossible too, because I mean, I don't know if you guys have been in tax sale. This guy sits in the back, Tom Terry, he's got his army of people with laptops, and they've got a line of credit somewhere like $10 million, and they're just doing it for the spread on the interest rate. They don't actually care about the properties. They don't intend to own them. They just want them to be redeemed. So, I mean, I've certainly felt intimidated going to the tax sale, thinking like, how do I compete with that? Because that's like their business. That's just what they do. And, I mean, I don't know any way around it.
I know the top one, they don't want the redemptions.
So they want the houses?
They want the houses.
Really?
They redeem, they say that's a break even.
Oh, wow.
So they're playing numbers game by buying so many, and if they have their target redemption, which I think is like 20%,
Yeah.
that won't redeem, that's what they're in.
And then they just flip them over really quick. Because, you know, I bought tax liens in Madison County. And it feels like such a waste of time because they always redeem them. And then you're out all that cash while you're waiting, and then you're just like, okay, well, I guess I was just a dummy. You know, that's how it feels.
And with us, I mean, we've went to the tax sale this year. Our strategy is we don't want people's interest. I mean, we don't want to ask people for extra money because, I mean, we're not a for-profit. We want the land to be returned to productive use if no one's using it. So our pre-tax sale process is going through all these properties, looking at these properties in person, and rating them and identifying which ones aren't being used for anything, which ones haven't been paying taxes for a while, which ones are not going to be redeemed, but which ones also still have strategic value to us and to our partner organizations.
So are you competing against these guys at the tax sale, or do you have a separate route?
We can compete with, well, we can't compete with them, but we do go to the tax sale and bid on properties. But we've also, again, in the past, like we did for the Old West End project, we went and we asked the commissioners after the sale for things that did not sell. And we were awarded some of those tax certificates. And we went through the process of taking all those to deed ourselves and taking them through quiet title action to clean them up, et cetera.
So when these big guys, when they win the houses, and assuming they aren't redeemed, what do they do with them?
That's a good question. They quit claiming them to other LLCs. Yeah, it really depends. That's part of what I'm doing now is really trying to find a clear storyline, a clear path of what happens to every type of property that goes through this process. There's a million stories, so it's a lot to sort through, but I think it'll be really insightful. But yeah, that's a big question. That's a big question. So this is a comparison on the right side to 2024 then. You can see 3 out of the top 5 buyers, again, were in the top 5. The same people. M. Jewell LLC, who lives just outside of Muncie borders, so he's technically in Delaware County, unincorporated. Asset Management Holdings LLC, then Morgan Hinchy. She's a private resident. This one is based on Clara Lane by Walmart somewhere. But there were 30 buyers last year. Again, Home Free Enterprises, which I think is Mark Price, 40. Really? Okay. See, his when you go to Indiana Business Search, you can find a little bit of information about entities, and we're going to go over that here in a second. He is the incorporator, governing person for that, not for Redemption Warriors. But that's good. I appreciate that. It's good. So yeah, I spent almost $2 million at the tax sale. So out of 30 buyers this time, so even more buyers, but he still spent a larger share of the overall spend at the tax sale, over 43%. So these top 5 buyers hit 90% of tax sale expenditure. This same analysis, but this time by parcels won. Top 5 buyers in 2025, out of 25 buyers, got 61.1% of the tax certificates. So 88% of the spend, really close to 89% of the spend, 61% of the parcels. And in 2024, 60.1% of the parcels. So in 2024, it was 90% of spend, 60.1% of parcels. Kind of sounds like a bad deal to me if you just want a high number of parcels, but that's not how it works. There's another question here. Let me see if I can get it to pull up. That's not happening. Okay, this question is going to ask if you have ever participated in the tax certificate sale. If you could answer this, would be great. This is a great data point to have for my research. Is it working? Oh, here, let me reload it. Sorry. This is my first time using this program. Apologize for that. Okay, awesome. Okay, if you just want to answer that, and then I'll move on. Appreciate that. Some more about buyers. Again, this is listed, so they're in the same order here on the right side of how much they paid in total, in sum. But then instead it's the average bid price. So what the average bid is they placed on each of the tax certificates that they won. And then the percent change over the other category. So Asset Management Holdings LLC, their average bid price was 900% of the other category. Whereas Redemption Warriors, they spent the most capital, but they bought some lower value properties and had a much lower average bid price than some of these other folks. So a 166% greater average bid than others. So again, the top 5 purchasers were responsible for 90% of the dollars spent at the 2024 and 2025 tax sales, but only acquired roughly 60% of the parcels sold. Why is this? Well, these bidders are consistently showing a willingness to spend more than others. All were ranked within the top 9 highest average bids. So if this had been sorted differently, they actually didn't have always the highest average bids, but they were up there. The average spend of these bidders per property was $33,000 altogether, which is greater than the $10,000 average for all other bidders, and that's for 2024. So I was going to go through the top 5. Just basically, we've seen that there's a conception, not necessarily a misconception, that the tax sale is the land of the out-of-state landlord, that out-of-state speculators like to come in and buy tax certificates, get a bunch of interest on property, or get those properties and not really do anything with them. That can be the case, but really it's not always the case. It's not nearly the case as much as people sometimes make it out to be. It seems. So Redemption Warriors LLC, Ryan just said that's Mark Price. So this is Principal office in Muncie, registered agents in Muncie. It's created in 2024. But under this LLC, and there can be other LLCs that are not identifiable, but there are 0 Delaware County parcels owned. My process usually is in identifying these things is because in Beacon, which is the county's website for property information, you can look up by their LLC, right? And you'll see, I mean, people keep properties in tons of different LLCs. Sometimes they keep one property in one LLC to shield it from liability if something happens in another property. You can go through Indiana Business and type in whoever that registered agent is or governing person, and you can find every LLC that they've ever been a part of in Indiana as the main principal or, again, as a registered agent. And if you do that, you can see other LLCs that they have in the city. I did not do that for this one, though. But yes, Indiana Business Entity Search. It's like it's the Secretary of State's website. I didn't do it for this one because on this one, Mark Price didn't show up as the governing person. But knowing that, he does have a lot of property because he has Property Pros, Redemption or Home Free Enterprises last year, etc.
Is it just because he has like a different service, like process person or something, and you kind of have someone else doing the process?
Yeah, you don't have to make yourself the governing person. I don't believe. I'm not 100% certain on that process though. So M. Jewell LLC, principal office in Muncie. That was created in 2006. Similar organization, also governing person, which is Tom Terry. Principal office in Muncie, that was created in 2002. There are court cases online you can see against these two entities. Combined 12 Delaware County parcels owned. So, I mean, you might naturally think, wow, these people are buying a ton of tax certificates. They probably have a bunch of property in Muncie. It's not necessarily the case. Yes, yeah, exactly. So they're not in they're not in these two LLCs. Part of my research moving forward is to take the sales disclosure form data, which is available from 2015 to 2025, luckily, and try to identify as easily as possible when people have quitclaimed these properties to other LLCs. The problem with that is that you don't always have to quitclaim, or you don't always have to report in a sales disclosure form to the assessor or to the auditor that you quitclaimed a property, especially if it's for no valuable consideration. So if you quitclaim it for nothing, you don't need to report it. So Indiana Tax Auction LLC, the third largest buyer in the tax sale this year. Principal office is in New Jersey. The registered agent, though, is in Indianapolis. It's created in 2019, and under this LLC, they own no parcels in Delaware County. Asset Management Holdings LLC, principal office is in Fishers, registered agents in Fishers, created in 2007. Similar names on Indiana Business that are still active organizations are Asset Management Holdings in Colorado and Asset Management Holdings 2, which is based out of Sarasota, Florida. So the Asset Management Holdings Colorado is actually principal offices in Fort Wayne. The Sarasota, Florida one is registered as a foreign entity, so it's principally registered in Florida, but you have to incorporate here in Indiana. I don't know if that's the right term, to participate in the tax sale. Because you need to provide, if you're under an organization, provide a certificate of good standing with the Secretary of State. Yeah, so you see jurisdiction of formation there, Colorado and then Florida. And then between these three entities on Beacon, you can see they own 9 Delaware County parcels, which are all in Muncie. Morgan here, sole proprietor, no LLC or organization, 0 Delaware County parcels owned. Any questions on the bidders, buyers? Yeah.
Question. So the average bid is 70, 26, 26. So the starting bid price, I'm assuming, is just what taxes are owed on it.
Yes, and penalties and fines, et cetera.
I'm guessing it's usually under 10 grand.
It depends on how many times it's been through the tax sale.
Okay.
If it's been through the tax sale and no one's bid it, the commissioners haven't taken it to deed, it can accumulate those really fast.
So those never stop accumulating.
Yeah, I mean, until it's taken through quiet title, I mean, until it's paid off, until it's granted to an organization like us who would take it through quiet title action, which clears claims on the property, clears liens.
Okay, so say these guys are bidding against each other. It doesn't really matter how high it goes, because if it doesn't get claimed, they're entitled to the surplus being paid back to them? Is that what I heard at the beginning?
No, you don't get the surplus back if you have to take the property to deed. Yeah, sorry. I should have clarified that for sure. You don't get the surplus, again, if you take the property to deed. So if you pay a bunch for the property and the property, you win that certificate, I'm pretty sure that money is in that escrow, which can go to the original owner. If they choose not to redeem their property, that owner is entitled in the escrow to that surplus money. Because again, the county can only be made whole legally. So
where does the extra money go? Does it go to the county?
it's in the county's escrow fund, but the original owner has the right to claim those dollars, yes. But you as the bidder, you don't get that money back if you're taking the property. So there can be an element of gambling, per se, but I think most of these guys do their research on what they're bidding for. Again, if they're in it for the money, they want the property, and they're going to bid it up really high. They want to make sure that the property is going to be worth that. Yeah, that's a really good question.
I just saw that the bidder was entitled to the surplus, but I think that's when it's redeemed.
Yes. Yeah, so if it's redeemed, the bidder gets that surplus back plus the 5% penalty for that.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but that Supreme Court ruling, which now, that money that's in escrow gives the original owner some right to be able to acquire that surplus. That's something relatively new, and I don't know if it's actually worked itself out.
It's new as a federal ruling by the Supreme Court because it was in Minnesota, Hennepin County, right? They didn't have a process for that surplus to be collected by the original owner. Basically, if that property wasn't redeemed and it was given to the bidder, that surplus stayed with the county. What the Supreme Court ruled in this case is that there needs to be a process. They didn't define what that process was, but there needs to be a process or an opportunity for the original owner to claim that surplus because they're entitled to it, because otherwise I believe it counted as a taking. Yeah.
So if a property doesn't get bid on, goes through the cycle, comes up next year, it's going to be even more money to bid on it that year?
Yes.
That's one of the systemic flaws of the tax sale that we've kind of talked about is that you have, although Zach's research is starting to parse it out a little bit differently, but in general you've got properties that their vitality is actually decreasing because it's set there for another year or however long. At the same time, the price is going up.
Yep.
And so
I'll show that on a graph here in a second. Yeah.
yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, and so like some of these vacant lots that we were awarded had already been through this process like 7 or 8 times, tax sale appearances. No one's bidding on them. The taxes are outrageous. It would be expensive for the commissioners to take it to deed. So they gave it to us, but it was for no cost, so we didn't have to pay the taxes off on them. And we took it and we cleared them with quiet title action. And some of these properties, I mean, beyond just taxes, right, they had unsafe building liens, violations, like for not boarding, for not mowing, for it being an unsafe building and not complying. And those just add up, huge list, right? So the quiet title action process, for the most part, for municipal liens, takes care of that and cleans them up. Okay, another question here. Hopefully it works. Which question is supposed to be? Oh, this is already answered. Great. Okay, so let's see. Okay, that's great. It's great that's already been answered. Did everyone get a chance to answer this question? I guess because some of you already saw it. If you could answer it, if you haven't, that'd be great. Greatly appreciate it. So this goes back to the question that we were just talking about. Do these people, do these entities, do these individuals bidding on properties or bidding on tax certificates at this sale, are they really interested in acquiring those properties in general, or would they really just rather have the interest from those redemptions from the original owner? Awesome. Looks like a majority of you said actually acquiring the property, which is great. So this is showing what properties actually sold in this sale and which properties did not sell based on how many tax sale appearances they've had in the last 10 years or so. So for 2025, it's appearances starting from 2015 all the way up to 2025. So if it's one time, it's the first time in the last 10 years that it's appeared on the tax sale. Second time, it's appeared once before. Third time, it's appeared twice before, etc. So you can see for the first, second, third, and fourth time, properties were still selling, and it decreased each subsequent time, or each preceding time. And then for not sold, sale appearances 5, 6, 7, 8, all the properties did not sell. So there's properties that are on each part of the tax sale appearance gradient here, and they have not sold, but the ones that are actually selling only appear the first four tax sale appearances. So of all that's sold in 2025, 86.8% of sold parcels were appearing for their first time. So this year, it was incredibly likely that if a property was going to sell, it was going through its first time in the tax sale. In the 2024 tax sale, you can see the second, third, fourth, fifth. There was actually a property that sold in the fifth appearance, which seems rather unlikely based on other historical analysis. But in the first tax sale appearance, and this is 2015 up until 2024 this time, 108 sold, and then it decreased each time, the number that were selling. And the number that were not selling increased, or the percentage at least. So bid minimum, comparing the bid minimum to the bid price. So you can see, maybe here, the tax sale appearances again on the bottom axis, and the left side is going to be bid price. They're set to both be the 30K axis. So this is 2024 and this is 25. But once you get to that fourth, so the light blue is the bid price. So it's how much people are paying for these properties on average. And the dark blue is the bid minimum. So that's how much is owed on these properties. So the first, second, and third time in the tax sale, and the fourth because of that one property, the bid price is still above zero. But the bid minimum, as you get to the third and to the fourth, is above, right? So on average, the county's not recouping as much money for these properties that have gone through this many times as is due. And then you can see fourth, fifth, sixth, it just keeps going up, and the bid minimum is far outweighing the bid price. So people aren't paying for these properties at all. And going down to 2024, it's a very similar story. The bid minimum just keeps going up, and the bid price just keeps going down. So the properties that have been in multiple times, and they're cycling through the tax sale process, the more times that they appear on the tax sale, especially with a finite time, the more that's going to be owed on that minimum bid, and the less that people are willing to pay for it. Yes?
As you guys have done this analysis, are you taking just the raw data, like parcel ID or something? How do you get the...
There's a few different ways that I've done it. So the only attribute that's really staying the same is the state parcel ID throughout, but because of delete and combines, which in this case there are a few instances where people have actually used the property as a side lot, that parcel ID gets lost. So this analysis, this is based on parcel ID, but this analysis also has been done spatially. So if the parcel is located in the same space as it was, even though that parcel ID is changed, the attributes get hooked to each other and parsed that way instead. A lot of these, see, it's hard to pinpoint what actually, we can't prove causation, not at my level, but it's hard to say, like, this leads to this, or is this actually leading to this? Like, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, the bid price is going way down. By that time, if there was a house on it when it first started to appear, that house has been knocked down. So there's no improvement value. The property has significantly decreased in price, but all the taxes that it was delinquent on that were originally accruing were based on an assessed value of a structure, not of a lot. So now in land in Muncie, especially in central Muncie, I mean, lots are worth $1,000 to $4,000 assessed value based. So these taxes are going to far exceed that. So it doesn't have to be a brownfield. It doesn't need to be any hazard of any sort. It doesn't even need to be a legal hazard. It could still be a clean title and clean deed. It's just that the taxes have so far exceeded this, and you still have to take it through the tax deed process. Then you still have to take it through quiet title action. If there are some of those liens, it's just not worth it. And this scale can be kind of misleading here. But the first tax sale appearance, right? This bid minimum here is under $5,000. But the bid price, and this is averages for all properties that had one tax sale appearance, is more than triple that, right? It's over $15K. But when you get to the 6th tax sale, the bid price, the average bid price is $0, but the bid minimum is over $20,000. So even though the scale's a little off, but it's been shrunk. These properties are worth a lot based on how the process works and the mechanism in the first time. But then immediately, even just the second time, that gap significantly decreases. It's gone from 3 times to less than, it's what, 1.5 times as much. And when we did this analysis for it was 2011 through 2024, it was even more drastic. So all these humps got smoothed out, and you could just see the bid price went down after the first sale. It was just over the minimum bid on the second sale, and then at the third, it had dropped to 0. So no one was buying these properties, on average, from 2011 to 2024. Yeah, I am not clear on what that statute is. I think it can be, there's a lot of discretion for the commissioners and the assessor and the auditor to have based on this. But if it doesn't sell at the deed sale and I've taken it to the deed sale, it can still go back to the tax sale. It's important to point out, though, that this doesn't account for properties that have actually been addressed and then just happen to reappear. So a property could have sold in the first time for excess, really. And then it could have been converted to a deed, and that landlord or whoever was using the property for whatever purpose, the value could have just continued to decline. I mean, there are cases of owners, and not necessarily through the tax sale process or not, that are really just extracting wealth from the home, not re-injecting capital into it to improve the home or improve what the rent prices could be. I mean, sometimes because of just what the value is even capable of being. So it just continues to decrease. And then when it comes to the tax sale again, eventually, because they eventually stop, they don't have tenants anymore, They stop paying taxes on it. It comes into the chart lower, even though it has been taken care of, and it didn't just appear like repeatedly. Yes, exactly. And usually, if a property sells, I mean, you have to have a gap because it's still in that redemption period. So yeah, it's not consecutive. So you had asked about, I think, what it looks like versus structures versus vacant lots in regard to the process. So this was some linear regression. Is anyone a statistics expert here? Because you can probably find mistakes. So the axes are the same, just to show the scale here. But what we found running linear regression again, on the x variable being the improvements assessed value for, and this is for 2024 props, the improvement assessed value for 2024 to what that bid surplus was in 2024. So that, huge swath of money. What we found, there was a 59.7, so it was 0.597 r squared, so it was a 59.7%. X determines y as deterministic of y by 59.7% or something. The coefficient of x is for every dollar increase in improvements assessed value on a linear scale. For every dollar increase in improvements assessed value, you're going to have a 29-cent increase in bid surplus. So again, every dollar more that there are in improvements assessed value, there's 29 cents more in bid surplus that's going to be generated from this tax sale. So the higher value of the property, the more surplus it's going to generate. So at the end here, you see, so like a $150,000 property, regardless of what the minimum bid is, it's going to generate it's like $42,000 in bid surplus if it's a $150,000 house. This same regression analysis, but with the percent, but that the bid price is over the bid minimum, so it's like the percent spread. That correlation is even stronger at 63%, and the significance F is far below what the 0.05, so it's very, very statistically significant. So then some of my last few things here, showing you the tax sale list geographically. So fall of 2025, this is color-coded based off of the tax sale appearances since 2015 or so. So the lightest is the fewest appearances. The darkest red is the most appearances. So that's Muncie. That's the industry neighborhood, which is one of our key partnership areas. 80 listings this year. 80 properties in the industry neighborhood were on the tax sale. Old West End, another key partnership area. Only 19 listings, but a lot of the ones that would have been continually listed are in our inventory. And then Whiteley here, 75 listings on the 2024 tax sale. And you can see there's a lot of darker red properties too. So they've been through this process a lot. Which, these? No, it's by the Muncie Action Plan's geographic neighborhood boundaries. So it's spatially clipped to only be.
Zach, can you tell us how many, so of the 75 here in Whiteley?
Yeah, so
How many sold and how many didn't sell?
I think in industry, 19 sold out of the 80. And then in Whiteley, similar number. It's very low percentage. Yes?
I guess my question there would be, if you look at those stats, how many of that is vacant properties? So I guess in my study, quite a bit of that in those neighborhoods is vacant property.
Yes. A lot of the ones that aren't selling are vacant property, and the ones that do sell have structural improvement on them. So I mean, it follows the same principle that's here. The higher the, if there's $0 in improvement value, if there's $0 in improvement value, which would be a vacant property, the bid surplus actually goes negative, which means that they wouldn't be getting any money off of it at all, right? They'd actually still be losing money because that original bid wasn't fulfilled. They didn't recoup those tax dollars. Yeah. And I mean, part of this is, it's the economy. There's an economy of scale factor here. I mean, there's several reasons to go out into the suburbs and develop. One of them is that it's one wholly owned piece of land that you can be subdividing as you're selling the land after there's been a home put on it. And in inner city, older neighborhoods like this, I mean, that's just not possible, right? Because it's so split up. But when there's someone who's holding that land cohesively, one entity who knows that these titles are clear, and they're close together, they're clusters like Nate said, I mean, they become much more developable. Okay, so this is a time lapse of 2015 to 2025 that will be shown cumulatively, progressively. So properties aren't going to disappear, but as they appear more times, it'll get darker. So there's layers for all of the years, and they'll stack on top of each other, and they're set at 25% opacity. So as they stack, it'll get darker. So what's interesting, I mean, there might be that natural correlation, but if you look at the vacancy, abandonment, and deterioration map from Scout Muncie almost 10 years ago now, you'll see that it kind of follows the same geographic pattern of property tax delinquency. Where the river is a boundary, and then train tracks up and then out of Muncie. All these southeastern neighborhoods have been much more impacted or have been subject to much more of these delinquent property tax properties than the northwest side. So oftentimes if these are on the list at the tax sale, they're not going to be on the list at the tax sale for long. Someone's going to buy them right away. I mean, they were being bid up to six figures at this last tax sale. And considering what you learned or didn't learn from this presentation, again, rate your attitude overall towards the tax certificate sale. I think that it definitely has its place. I mean, I think it's effective in what it actually sets out to do, but only on select properties. And so I think the ones that have been left behind need an alternative. I'm just not sure what that alternative exactly is yet. Other states like Ohio and Michigan, they are able to, the statutes at the state level actually tell them, or give them funding and give them property. Say the local municipalities who set them up have to do that. For us, I mean, in Indiana, land banks, it's optional.
Yeah, I think that would be a next comparative study. Like, I don't know if there's been some comparison between states that support land banks and states that don't, and how they're doing it.
Nate still has some things here.
Yeah, and I'll be real quick. We can pretty much close it up. I just wanted to make sure, again, Zach brings all this information. A lot of times I got that. These are some of the things that I took away going through Zach's presentation. Things that we've already talked about. The tax sale, Ryan, do we feel like it's effective? It's effective at tax recovery. Not, per property, but aggregately, it's a way for the county to recuperate some taxes generation of buyers, this is one of the things that kind of like really stood out to me, is like, what we talked about, the tax sale has kind of become a thing, it's kind of become a business thing, where people with a lot of money can go in and make it work. And may not really do anything as far as like, again, making the property productive. We're going to be studying that. But it kind of shuts out the small local people. There's a lot of people go in there. I was talking to a guy after, he was like, man, I sat there, I've been on 10 properties, and I didn't get close to anything. It was some local guy that wanted to do property and rehab. And that's the reality of the kind of the tax sales are coming. Diminishing returns and hidden costs, we're talking about, that between surplus and bid price, it quickly crosses over into the red. And it doesn't consider all the costs of the Board of Taxes, all the costs of the city. And what we have is really a backlog. We've got properties, there's properties that don't sell, and they just, there were, in 2024, there were more than 13% of the properties that went to the tax sale more than 10 times. It's just kind of doesn't make a lot of sense. These are some of the costs I was just going to quickly hit on, but it affects the property around it, drives down property values. It's kind of like this vicious cycle. Next door, guys, property value goes down. That means that his assessed value is going down. That means that his taxes are going down. That means that the city has less revenue to provide essential services. All the abatement costs, mowing, boarding up houses, police and fire, abandoned houses attract lots of unhoused people that go in there, start fires, try to stay warm. They get called all the time. A lot of places where drug use is frequent, those kinds of things. So that's another cost. And then these are just a couple real examples from the South Bend study. A house left vacant for 8 years costs the city and county owners $31,000, covering demolition, maintenance, public safety, and other paid taxes. And then this is a vacant lot here, 5 years, $15,000. It's expensive, and it's not necessarily anybody's fault, and there's not necessarily an easy solution, but what we're proposing is maybe there's an alternative. Maybe the land bank can be a part of that. That would be the main protagonist, but maybe we can be a part of it. We presented a proposal to the county at the beginning of the year. Said, let us take some of those properties that lingered in the tax sale. We'd love to go try to start to wrap some with the capacity that we have. And it was not accepted. There were some other things in that proposal that maybe that was why they were turned off. We asked about operational funding and those kinds of things. But anyways, we have made a proposal, so we've talked about with the city, we've talked about with the redevelopment commission, we've talked about with county commissioners. That is one of our intentions in the future, is like to revisit this. And perhaps next year we have an opportunity to kind of you want to?
Yeah. This, you can explore all of the 2025 tax sale data if you want. You can scan that QR code and it'll pull up a mobile version, but there's also quite a few more features on, like you open it up on your desktop. But you can see things by buyer. You can see the assessed, like the average assessed values for properties. You can filter it by neighborhood. You can see the historical number of tax sale appearances. I can actually open it up here. No, but I can make that happen, yeah. Yeah, so you can just slice things. You can see top owners. You can click to see exactly what they bought and where they bought it. So like this is where Redemption Warriors was getting tax certificates at. You can't see my screen. I realize that. Yeah, so like we can click on Redemption Warriors. And Jewel, we can see where those tax certificates exactly were. We can see, let's see, like average assessed valuation. So the average gross AV for individual, he was buying properties on average worth $50,000. Then you can also do that by neighborhood too. But yeah, that's all I have.